VCs are hyping what they now call AI scribes, aka transcription. Hey everyone, and welcome to SlaterPod before we head off to a quick summer break. Hi there, Esther.
Hi, Florian. Where are you off to on vacation?
Mountains, always mountains. It's hot in the valleys. That's when we head up to the mountains.
Very nice. And we'll be heading to another valley soon.
Yeah, we did not plan this, but definitely we gotta go with the valley analogy. So Silicon Valley, also a valley that may or may not be hot. It's California, right? So SlaterCon Silicon Valley, September 4th and 5th, main conference on September 5th, welcome reception September 4th. You have to register, a bunch of CEOs, great buyer turnout. So go and head over to the website and register. We're looking forward to it. All the flight tickets are booked, the locations rented. AV is being set up. It takes forever in California. You got to pay an extra fee for the electrician to make sure the power is on. And then you got this Wi-Fi thing that you need to activate. It's we need Wi-Fi. Anyway, that's inside conference talk. So on the agenda today, more interpreter lawsuits, then nice video on UN interpreting that we came across. DeepL fires back on quality. VCs are hyping what they now call AI scribes, aka transcription. You'll tell us a bit more about what's going on in the world of M&A and funding. And then there's a voice clone song translation startup thingy that is working with Universal Music Group. That we want to talk about. So last week we talked about the interpreter lawsuit in the UK that's making its way through to maybe a court. And then we come across, I think, an older legal case involving LanguageLine, and that we came across a Law 360 article. That's a pretty good legal website that covers all these legal cases in the US. So they're saying that in the coming week, attorneys should watch for the potential sign-off on a nearly $4 million settlement to resolve proposed wage and hour class and collective action against language interpretation company LanguageLine Services. So there's all kinds of things like off-the-clock work, unpaid breaks, kickbacks, failure to pay. I mean, we're not going to go into the details here of the accusation, but it seems like there's going to be a settlement reached here that includes attorney fees and all kinds of other ancillary costs here. But it will cover 8,000 collective members and 1,500 class members, all of whom, according to Law 360, they call them language interpreters. So, and then we're actually going to be publishing a story today on the Canadian Translation Bureau that's also getting some pushback from, I think, 75% of their freelance interpreters about the interpreters not getting paid for breaks between the debates. So you show up at the debate, you're going to interpret, and then apparently they're not going to pay you for the time you have to wait between the debates. I mean, I don't know, you're there.
It's not free time. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, what are you supposed to do? Break out your MacBook and start doing some other work? You're there now. So there's this repetitive pattern here of it's just a very, very, very competitive industry that makes companies and buyers attempt to cut corners, and then you get pushback from the linguists. So, not necessarily taking any sides, but it's just a reflection of just it's very tough. Now, speaking of interpreting, another segue. So, hat tip to Barry Olson for tweeting this out. I missed this. There was an interesting video that was catchily called "How the UN Translates Everything in Real Time." So, talking about another major employer of simultaneous interpreters, and that was published by a large YouTube account called Half is Interesting. It's got 2.6 million subscribers, and each video gets 1 million views or more. So some of these videos, I looked up the channel, they cover all kinds of things. So some of the more recent videos were called Mumbai's Crazy efficient, 99% accurate food delivery system. Another one was called Why the Ocean Looks So Fake on Google Maps. All right, does it? Or the weird, terrible smartphones they only have in North Korea. Okay, that's what gets you the views on YouTube. Maybe we should call this podcast something crazy as well. Anyway, so what did we learn from this video? We covered it before. UN, 6 official languages. Then each language has its own interpreting booth, which must meet industry standards for lighting, air circulation, soundproofing, etc. Each booth usually contains inside each booth are at least 2 interpreters.
Don't open the booth. Oh, there's 2 interpreters.
There's 2 interpreters. And then they also talk about interpreter qualification, the work schedule. Apparently, they swap out every 20 to 30 minutes to avoid cognitive, it's just
overload.
Challenging. We talked about that on the European Parliament interpreter podcast before. And then, interestingly, one interesting factoid is that freelance interpreters are apparently paid $666 per day. So that's a devilishly accurate or interesting number there, and very specific. And then, they also talked about relay interpreting, error management, etc. So, interesting video. And of course, it gets like 1,000 times more views than if we do an in-depth deep dive on conference interpreting on the podcast with a major buyer of interpreting. I'm not sure. What do we do? Change the video title? How do these guys get 1 million and we get 1,000 or 2,000 for some of the podcasts?
How long has it been going? They've got nearly 500 videos. Just got to keep plugging away, Florian, and then maybe we'll reach the lofty heights of 2.7 million subscribers.
On YouTube, it's this crazy mix of like thumbnail, crazy title, and then in this case also good content. I mean, I'll take Barry Olsen's retweet as an endorsement. He's one of the leading experts on this, so if he retweets it and says it's a good video, I take this as a sign of actual quality. All right, so let's move on to language services, also interpreting in the UK. Big numbers out there again. Familiar name. That's called Crown Commercial Service. Esther, tell us, what is the Crown Commercial Service and why does it procure £250 million worth of language services?
It's a good question. Crown Commercial Service, otherwise known as CCS. It's a contracting authority for the central government. So it would be used to procure all sorts of services for all sorts of different government organizations, government entities. So this is a heads up effectively on a £250 million, £250 million tender in the UK for a range of services relating to language. The primary service they have categorized is interpretation. So this actually, it kind of dates back, as you can imagine. You don't just sort of dole out £250 million overnight. But so it seems like this tender, or what will become a tender, has been under the subject of some discussion for a while. So this is a prior information notice, which means that it's going to eventually turn into a tender, which people will then be able to bid for and then be awarded and then start receiving work and money for doing it. But it replaced a previous notice that was had a sum of £150 million. Then the Crown Commercial Service was going through, said that they were going to go through kind of market engagement sessions, is what they called that. And that was back in June 2023, so a bit more than a year ago. They wanted to talk to suppliers and people that were potentially interested in bidding for the agreement. So presumably some kind of consultation has happened. The agreement has, the tender, the notice, and the potential contract has kind of morphed into something bigger, and I'm sure it's changed in other ways as well. But as it stands, so it's a prior information notice for a tender that will involve something they call National Managed Service Provision, bit of a mouthful, but that includes translation, transcription, over-the-phone interpreting, video remote interpreting, and on-site interpreting. That would be the first lot, the first kind of grouping of services. Then also includes a second lot called translation and ancillary services, which again includes written translation and ancillary services, a whole bunch of sort of website localization. I think they break it out into quite a few different sub-services. And then transcription being that third batch of services that they'll be procuring. They say transcription will include things like proofreading and post-editing. And both the transcription and the translation lots can be delivered, quote, using human and or technological solutions, they say in this document. And then the fourth lot is for visual interpreting services for deaf and deafblind people. Finally, they have a regional managed services lot, which is for face-to-face interpreting services throughout the UK and also overseas. So plan now is to then, I think, publish the contract notice on towards mid to late August 2024, with the intention that the CCS, the contracting authorities, will be able to select different services within a lot to be delivered by, they say, a single supplier on a national scale for most of the lots, with the visual interpreting services for deaf-blind people being on a regional basis, and obviously the overseas one being partially UK and partially overseas. So a lot of money potentially being doled out to some UK-based interpreting and translation providers.
And I remember this like 8 years ago. I think it was the first one. It seems to go in 4 years. And I think it was even at that time, it was like in the 200 million range. So it looks like they're renewing this.
They're renewing it. They're probably updating it. They're kind of reclassifying certain services, certain definitions, and probably the way that they want to organize some of these contracts as well.
Maybe TransPerfect's going to bid for it with their new Global Link live AI-enabled interpreting technology.
Yeah, perhaps. Why not? Although I would say, interestingly, in that contract information notice, it only specifies that translation and transcription may be used using human or technological solutions. It doesn't, I don't think, mention anything about although I'd have to probably pore through every word of it, but at least the headline doesn't seem to suggest that it doesn't specify that it can be human and or technological solutions. Doesn't mean they wouldn't be open to something like this.
I mean, it's just because we came across a press release that reads, TransPerfect introduced Global Link live AI-enabled interpreting technology. And so, this is one of the items that we catch in our daily subscriber newsletter. This is AI voice-to-voice translation to engage with live speech. The most challenging of challenges out there in terms of language AI. Yeah, pitch to the UN or European Union, etc. Hey, now, so DeepL fired back, not naming Unbobble, but seems like they fired back at Unbobble with a press release, and others as well. So, we had Unbobble on the podcast. They launched Tower LLM, an LLM specifically created for translation applications, and now DeepL launched the same thing. The headline that they the headline of their press release is DeepL launches next generation LLM that outperforms competitors on translation quality and fluency. That's quite the claim. It's very similar to Unbobble's press release. Interesting that both go for like the outperform and competitor and quality angle here. So now, we had Joao from Unbobble on the podcast, and he laid out why LLMs are the future for machine translation and all the various things you can do with these LLMs. So similarly, DeepL is now launching this for DeepL Pro customers and, for into English, Japanese, German, and simplified Chinese. So not yet across all of the languages, but I'm sure this is a kind of a rolling release there. That spans a lot. You got, a couple billion speakers here. So they say three things in the press release again: specialized LLM, so uniquely tuned for language, resulting in more human-like translations, proprietary data. They have had this kind of 7-8 years of what they call proprietary data specifically tuned for content creation and translation. And then human model tutoring, that's what they called it. So they said, with a focus on quality, DeepL model leverages thousands of hand-picked language experts specifically trained to tutor the model to best-in-class translation. I mean, that is the origin of DeepL, like that, huge pool of linguists that are tweaking and tuning the thing. And then it made some claims that it's, hang on, I'm going to have to read this. Like they said, blind tests showing that DeepL translation is preferred by language experts up to 2.3 times more often than major AI competitors. So that's a new standard right there. So the benchmark is how many times more is it preferred than other AI competitors.
It's probably like a multiple choice questionnaire for language experts. Do you like this, or this?
This, or this, yes. English, Japanese, and English to simplified Chinese, 1.7 times, 1.4 times for English and German.
But this is saying against the old model, right? 1.7 times improvement with the new LLM against the old model.
Against the old model, you're right. Okay, and then so it's beating the old model.
Yeah, I'm sure that test would have included competitors plus old version of DeepL. So you can do a range of comparisons there.
So we'll check it out. And yeah, as we now also know from also the podcast with Zhao, I think costs are no longer a major issue there.
For LLMs.
Yeah, for LLMs, apparently. So, hey, I want to briefly revisit this kind of translation as a feature discussion thread we've been pulling at for a long time. So there's two things that popped up, like Airtable now added translations. Airtable is this like super powered, what do you call it? Like spreadsheet?
Yeah. Makes it sound boring, but it's absolutely incredible.
It's an incredible tool we're using a lot. And they just, open it up yesterday, boom, it says, the usual AI star thing. And then it says, hey, generate, summarize, or translate texts. Add AI to any field using a custom prompt or a template. So any random SaaS, and I'm not saying Airtable is random SaaS, it's dear to our hearts, but like many software as a service companies or products are now adding translation as a feature.
Do we have it in Asana? I haven't checked.
I'm sure we have it, or maybe it's not launched yet, or maybe they're cautious because it's Europe, who knows, right? So that's one. So Airtable added it, then also got a notice that HappyScribe has added glossary feature, now supports translations. So they have a glossary feature, and now you can translate the glossary, which and then you can edit it, and so make sure that the translations that you're running through HappyScribe are somewhat more customized. I actually looked back when I on the podcast that we had with HappyScribe back in January 2023, and at that time they said they're using DeepL and Google Translate. Maybe something else, maybe something has changed since then. It's already 18 months ago. But the question is like, who actually powers all this translation? Is it now like just an OpenAI API, or is it like still within the core machine translation community or offering? One more thing before we go to M&A. I just want to mention a quick tweet storm by one of the venture capitalists, a person called Olivia Moore from Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z. And she tweeted, I'm going to have to pull this up, about what they call AI scribes. So basically, this is a venture capitalist going out there, they're tweeting, they have these little market maps, they try to get a ton of engagement on Twitter or X. And this one was about AI scribes, and then it starts new AI. New Andreessen Horowitz investment thesis, AI scribes. Imagine if you had a superhuman assistant that listened to your conversations, took perfect notes, and flagged follow-ups. And it could make you smarter by surfacing insights or trends you missed. More from me and somebody else. And then they had this market map, which includes things like, I think we have the script on there and a bunch of other logos. And then she proceeded to give all kinds of examples, very much kind of engaging Twitter content. But then there's this transcription market size estimate that it's like $40 billion by 2023. And it's the source is this grandviewresearch.com thing, which whatever market size you Google, they somehow end up ranking very highly. But the market size, I mean, is
And that's
super
for the
questionable.
US, right? Just the US.
You're right. That's just for the U. Sure. Okay. So the US market for transcription is currently $27 billion. That's what they're tweeting out. And it has a CAGR, compound annual growth, of 5.8% by 2030. So, I mean, really? Like, does it? Like, so 27, so it's as large as we estimate the entire language industry to be, just the US transcription market. All right, so where are the, I don't know, 1,000 transcription companies that would be needed to service that market? Not sure I see them. And then, yeah, there's a few other things. And then you scroll down and they mention that the VC mentions a bunch of kind of individual small startups that are in the AI scribe market slash transcription. Then adding some of the companies mentioned below here are portfolio companies of Andreessen Horowitz. A list of investments made, blah, blah, is available. So I go to that list, and lo and behold, Captions AI shows up as one of the investments made by one of the investments that Andreessen Horowitz made. And Captions.ai, not Captions.com, Captions AI just raised 60 million Series C at a $500 million valuation, and the lead investor was Index Venture, also a DeepL backer. The lead investor is the backer of DeepL. I didn't actually know that Andreessen Horowitz was part of this until that tweet storm. So yeah, I mean, look, let me just close this. Basically, if you're on X, if you're on maybe LinkedIn sometimes, like there are all these narratives around this, these repackaging of things, like really like captions or transcription is now AI scribes. Like that's where we're going with this, AI scribes. Like, how would we repackage translation? There's also something, I'm sure, like in a couple of months from now, some VC is going to recaption translations. But yeah, it's just an interesting framing. And yeah, just beware of the hype by some of these VCs as well. All right, let's get back to the factual world of how much money Captions.ai raised. And what are they planning to do with it? What is Captions AI?
I think you sort of laid the groundwork there a little bit, explaining somewhat about it, and gave some of the figures, but I'll just repeat those. So Captions was valued at $500 million, $500 million, in a Series C round where it raised $60 million. It's an AI video startup, is what it calls itself, based in New York. And its sort of core aim is allowing non-professionals to create, edit, and also distribute videos. It also has this Synthesia type solution. Remember, we've talked about Synthesia many years, where users can type text and then have that text spoken by an avatar. So it's kind of avatar voicing type solution. But I mean, to your point, earlier point about sort of translation as a feature, they provide translation for subtitles and dubs in 28 languages. And they use AI, they say, to make translated voices sound like the original. So some kind of MT solution for multiple languages plus AI voices, or some kind of AI layer applied to voices to make them sound like their original in the translated version.
It's confusing. I'm going to have to step back to my comment about AI scribes now and Andreessen Horowitz. So Andreessen Horowitz, AI scribes, basically is trying to make or add an AI cool layer on top of the transcription market and captions market. And then you got a company called Captions AI, which is now raising all that money, including from Andreessen Horowitz. And they're not calling themselves an AI scribe company. They're an AI video editing startup. But a core part of the platform is obviously that you need to have, it's got to be multilingual, right? And then the voices, need to sound natural. So there's this it's just becoming very complex, having all these language features, and the kind of the existing categories are slowly disappearing. I mean, where would you put this now?
I suppose companies are thinking more about the use cases.
Well, what is the use case for this? What is the use case? No, seriously, like what is the use case at scale? How many avatars are you going to do that are saying lip sync things in 28 languages?
Okay, well, I mean, the market is non-professionals, of which there are. I mean, I'm not here to defend the thesis or the investment or
No, please do defend.
Or the valuation. But okay, allows non-pros. Okay, I'd consider myself among that cohort to create, edit, and distribute videos.
We're recording a podcast. Like we could theoretically choose to, run it in 28 languages, but would we just click a button and get AI synced and dubbed? I don't know. How much of this type of content is going to be created? I mean, maybe created, yes, but consumed. I just wonder.
Okay, yeah, consumption is a different question. But I mean, creation, in a way, you can't control who consumes what you create, I think, especially.
Yeah, but they're going to have to make money with this. I mean, otherwise, why would I buy a Captions.ai subscription?
Yeah, I don't know the pricing exactly, but I think obviously part of this would be lowering the barrier to entry, lowering the barriers to video creation for non-experts.
It's just that the language, I mean, the name, it's not called video.ai, it's called Captions.ai. So, I mean, your name literally is a feature. Yeah.
It's a good point. Yeah, the name of the company, yeah.
You call it Translate AI, and then you're a video editing platform.
Yeah. Okay, we could talk about the choice of company name. maybe they've evolved. Maybe it was at some point the idea was to be a bit more of a captioning company.
But that company's 2 years old, so that point must have been like 18 months ago. All right, let's go to something that we understand a lot better, which is manga AI translation in Japan. What's going on there?
Well, okay, so not quite such astronomical figures there, but we have a conversational manga AI translation that the company's raised more like $5 million. This company called Mantra. Sorry, I was reading Mantra as manga. There we go. All sorts of problems with company names today. But this company called Mantra, has raised a few million $US to continue to develop controversial manga AI translation.
Sorry to jump in here, controversial, because I think some Japanese translation association recently came out with a statement that manga is the most unsuitable thing for machine translation. I think that's why we called it controversial.
Controversial, yeah, for sure. I mean, they're doing, I suppose, whatever they can to disprove the fact that it might be controversial. They're talking at least a lot about a low error rate when it comes to Japanese to English translations. They also have a number of other languages, traditional simplified Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, and also Portuguese. Which I wonder why they chose Portuguese in amongst all of those other Asia-based languages. Interesting one. But apparently, this is covered in the article, I think that Seema wrote the other day. Apparently, it's no longer niche because, or apparently manga translation not that niche because there was another startup not so long ago that also raised more like $20 million, Japanese startup, for a similar offering.
I want to come back to Austria, please. Let's get away from Captions AI
bit closer to home.
And Andreessen Horowitz and Japanese manga. Let's go to Austria. What happened in Austria?
Let's go to Austria. Yeah, well, so we had news that language service provider Topan Digital Language has acquired Meinrad in Austria, which will be the company's first presence in the DACH region. So congrats to them. Meinrad, of course, is a sort of long-standing LSP, also founded by a gentleman called Meinrad Reiterer, who has been the company's CEO, and it focuses on sectors such as life sciences, medical devices, and has around 40 employees. Of course, Topan, the buyer, people may remember, was set up in 2021. So they completed a number of acquisitions in the UK and already have a presence in the US, in Asia, and of course the UK, with the idea that Mindrad will soon be rebranded under the Topan Digital Language banner. I think as we covered in the article, estimates are that the acquisition and company growth generally puts the revenue for Topan Digital Language at around $60 million US dollars pro forma for 2024.
Now, since that was so close to home, we're going to have to go outside of the comfort zone again. So Universal Music Group has partnered with a company called Sound Labs AI. And I'm not going to try to go into detail here, but basically voice cloning, again, like captions, but this time in music. And apparently there's a feature called language transposition, all right, that allows you to, sing your song in a different language, or click a button and boom, it's sung in a different language.
Maybe that's our rebrand from translation to transposition.
You're right. It's language transposition. There comes in a tweet storm incoming. Sure. I'm not sure if songs tend to work if they're sung. I mean, maybe they are, but like obviously language is a key component of any song. So I'm not sure if you can just click a button and AI sing it. But yeah, it just shows you all that crazy stuff that's going on out there. And let's end on another quick announcement. So RWS launched a certification course on prompt design. Do you know more there, just to close off?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a quick, I think, press release that we caught as part of the sweep service as well. But yeah, as you said, RWS launched a certification course on prompt design. It said it is a new online training certificate on linguistic prompt design specifically. And of course, it's aiming to help learners use large language models in their day-to-day work. Of course, targeted at linguists, but they say it's useful to anybody who is curious about AI. So potentially a wider application, everybody, everywhere. Yeah.
All right. Look, this was a pretty jam-packed news episode. I don't think we've ever covered that many individual items, but there's just so much going on, and it really is hard to kind of put it together in a semi-coherent way. So hope this was interesting, and catch you on the other side of the summer break. Happy July.